Lord, yes, papi, hit me one time and make it funky.
I was brought up and told to have no fear. I was brought up and told to have no fear. I was brought up and told to have no fear.
Welcome to the Full Circle Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, David Roberts, along with the OG Dr. Neil Holmes and the oral historian Andre Taylor. Today, we have a very special guest because we want to talk about this very relevant topic. With us today is Larry Conway Jr. He is currently an income maintenance caseworker, formerly social services manager, and before that, he was a social worker at a home for the elderly. He received his criminal justice and social relations undergrad degree from Cheyney University at HBCU and his master's of social work from Widener University. Larry, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
As you know, the reason we wanted you on is because we wanted to talk about this topic. Right now, the Supreme Court of the United States is looking to review or turn back abortion rights.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a lot of people in an uproar. As I was telling you all, right before, we started recording, the students at my school that I'm a counselor in are planning a walkout, tomorrow. So by the time this is viewed, that walkout would have already taken place.
Okay.
So it just goes to show that it's impacting people from, very young age to, whatever the case may be. And I guess those young people should be very concerned because they're the ones that this is going to impact. It's not going to impact me. I'm done with that. But, that's something that they're probably looking at and it's like, okay, how is this going to, impact my future? So Larry, let's start with you. From a professional standpoint, how do you feel? And then I want to hear your personal opinion. If the two are, there's any disparity in the two. How do you feel like this is going to impact our community?
Yeah, so research everything that happened, the fact that they're trying to put it back on the Senate floor for a vote. It is waking up a lot of people regarding and how will they maintain their pregnancy or how will they not maintain their pregnancy. It is scaring a lot of people in the community all around, especially the minorities, because they feel as though they're not being heard. They feel as though their rights are being taken away, the right to choose. That's the biggest thing. They want that they feel as though that right to choose is very important. And the crazy thing about this has always been a subject ever since I was young. And it was somehow the propaganda behind it always put a scare to the community on what was going to happen or what the future was going to hold. So now that the fact that it's going to be put on the Senate, well, not being put, but that they're thinking about putting it on the Senate floor is really waking a lot of people up.
Now, how do you feel? I guess I should say personally, do you feel that it's, and I'm not trying to ask a loaded question. I'm not trying to point you in any direction.
That's
but
fine.
do you feel like it's just an outright invasion of privacy?
I do. That's my quick and short of it. I do feel as though it is an invasion of privacy. I had a conversation about this with a friend of mine yesterday, and I brought up a Whoopi Goldberg comedy special she did back in the 80s. I was explaining to her how we don't look at her as a comedian, we look at her as an actress or a TV host. But she did a genius off-Broadway comedy special on HBO, and she talked about back alley abortion and how it affected her. And based on, it was a character she made. And in the character, she was talking about back alley abortion and how it affected her between being raped and the fact that, she had to go through this traumatic experience. And I read and I see a lot of those experiences in real life. But that always stuck with me because I saw it at a young age, but growing up and knowing about it, knowing the history of it, knowing why it came about, is very traumatic for women, and it's very dangerous. And I don't think us going backwards is going to help. On the other hand, I think that as a people, we need to be more mindful. I could say careful, but that's going to be a little cold, but more mindful of how we conduct ourselves in society and with each other, But it is, I don't want it to go backwards to where it could become something tragic, is what I'm trying to say.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly, because I personally feel like people shouldn't use heroin or crack. That's my personal opinion. But I also don't think people should be thrown in prison for using heroin and crack. I think they have an issue. So throwing them in prison just because I think they shouldn't go to prison doesn't mean I want them using that.
Well, if I can interject real quick, in recent years in Kensington, they're slowing that down. Mm-hmm. But when we was coming up, they went to jail. So read between the lines if you must, because I went to school in Kensington. I went to Conway Middle School, and it was always rough around there. And it's funny how now they want to do rehab, and they want to put clinics on the spot, pop-up clinics, pop-up tables for clean needles and things like that. But when I was a kid walking to school at 33rd and Lehigh, I seen vials on the street everywhere. Me and Dre talked about this many times, and I didn't see any pop-up clinics or any tables or any clean needles in the community. But like I said, read between the lines.
Right, and it's a strong parallel there, because I don't know what they're going to do. If this goes forward, I don't know what they're going to do as far as if someone gets an abortion. And Dr. Holmes could probably speak to this, more than I could. But back in the day when it was illegal, what happened when someone was caught doing it. But I do want to get to that. But before we do, Dre, I want to come to you, because I remember when we first discussed this topic, you were like, you might not like what I want to hear. And I was like, no, I want to hear it. It's like, it's good for us that, we're not always going to, just because we have a similar mindset on most things, there's going to be some things we may just, differ in slightly. So Dre, what is your take on this?
I'm gonna take it back a long time ago.
Okay.
1776. I love hearing people talk about some we the people. And I always tell people all the time, it was never we the people, it was we the rich white men. Okay? It was never a situation where it was we the people, overall collectively kumbaya. That was never the case. Never the case. What was it, 1912 that white women got the right to vote? And then it was after that black women got the right to vote. So there's always been a white man in place telling people, women in particular, what they can and cannot do. If we go back into the colonial times, you're looking at barbaric law, you're looking at Old English law, with laws of property, and women were considered property, so it's, I think the mindset that we have here in this country, and it bothers me that we can go back to 1776, we the people, and realize that it never included women. It never included black people. It never included minorities of any kind. It was always rich white men. The aristocracy were the ones who pushed that forward, and they're the ones that still pushing us today. And it bothers me because it's like, everybody's like, this is such a tragedy. It's been going on. They've never been called out on it. And when you do call them out, well, that's not the case. No, that is the case. That is the case. And I think that what they really fear, I really think that they fear losing the grip. We've seen the numbers of Hispanics go up in this country because of birth rates, And I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, what do you attribute it to? And they said, well, you have to look at religion. The Catholic religion says be fruitful. So they're being fruitful and they're having these children. So if you think about it, this is the weird part. If you can't have an abortion, and if I make this illegal and you go to have an abortion, I don't have to worry. I don't care how many kids you have. Because the fact of the matter is this: you had your abortion, that's illegal, now I can send you to jail. It becomes another level of control. So we the people is at the forefront. And after I talked to you last week about it, I was upset and I thought about it a little bit more. And I'm like, it goes back to 1776. That whole mantra, we the people, it never included women.
And that's that makes a lot of sense, because I know when I first heard this law, let's go back, or not first heard this law, but first heard this concept of revisiting this. We know that the same people, these conservatives that are, you know, pro-life, and I don't blame anybody for being pro-life. I don't like abortion. It's not like I think the thought of abortion is great. You know, it's
Right.
just that I don't, you know, want it made illegal. I don't want the government in our privacy that much. And I definitely don't want people going to jail. But let's back up. So, you know, these pro-lifers are usually conservatives. And they're using the same people that push this narrative, which we all know is a myth. Larry probably knows it even more so than we do. They push this myth of the Black welfare queen. And that Black welfare queen is sucking up all of your hard-earned tax dollars. When we know the defense budget is 20 times, 100 times greater than any amount of women that are getting, you know, food stamps, or what, they don't even have the stamps anymore. I guess they give it a card or whatever the case may be. So with these people, these conservatives, I know they aren't looking for more minority children, although they, you know, perpetuate that myth. I know they don't want more dollars put into taking care of these children that women were saying that they didn't want, but now they're being forced to have. So I wondered that if it was kind of like what Dre said, it was just a way to target a community and, you know, make us illegal like they did with the war on drugs. You know, drugs weren't illegal. As Dr. Holmes would say, they made us illegal. Doc, I could see you rating the bus, brother.
I just want to say a couple of things responding to Dre. You know, abortion was not illegal in the United States probably until the middle or end of the 19th century. It was pretty much happening, and it was not illegal. So making abortion illegal was a relatively new thing. So that's one thing, and the history that's in the draft, when you read the history that's put in the draft, that history is really incorrect. So you know, because there's other historians have dealt with this before, and have looked at the fact that really there were, you know, the draft suggests that historically the United States has been, you know, because they believe in this, what do they call this stuff, originalist notion of the Constitution, that we need to follow the Constitution as originally written, which would mean that we would still be enslaved if we followed it, if it was as it's originally written. So you know, it really, the history is that up until really around 1870s, 1860s, 70s, 80s, abortion was legal or was not illegal, and was practiced really quite a bit. A lot of things about this country are interesting, because when you look at the founding of the country, and people talk, you know, it was a certain, you know, they suggest it was high morality and so forth. Yeah, most people didn't get married when this country was first founded. You know, you see, you had a lot of stuff going on that people would suggest, that make you think was always there. So that's the first thing in terms of the history they have in that draft is anti-history. The other thing we have to understand, and that's the point that you and Larry were dealing with in the beginning, is the question of privacy, because this Roe v. Wade is based on protecting an individual's privacy. So when you get rid of Roe v. Wade, you're talking about getting rid of a lot of different privacy issues. You know, you've had some, and use that term pro-life, but I don't like that term pro. I like pro or anti-abortion, because the anti-abortion people are not necessarily pro-life. They're the same people who would vote against programs to assist poor people. They're the same people who would vote against the government helping people get jobs. They're the same people who vote against programs, education programs for poor and working class and African people and so forth. They're the same people who vote against us rolling back all this pollution and who would not support anything to go against global warming. So these people are not really pro-abortion. I mean, pro-life. They're simply anti-abortion. And what we've done is let them use that language, which I think is the wrong thing to do. And last point I want to make is that at the same time, I believe that, you know, because some of these people talk about IUDs and stuff. I used to spend a lot of time on some of these racist websites and chat rooms and stuff. And what they were saying is, you know, they need to get the white birth rate up. That's one of the reasons they're doing that. And I listened to, I don't know if it was Face the Nation, Meet the Press, one of those shows on Sunday. And the governor of Mississippi was there, and he was saying, you know, we'll let these children be born, and we will get people to adopt them. So I believe, now you look at Supreme Court Justice Barrett. She has about 3 or 4 Black children, and you know, some of these folks want to adopt our kids. They don't want to assist the Black family, but they want to have the kids that result. I have a friend who's in Philadelphia now who's a family lawyer. And that person tells me that there's a battle every day because they're really trying to snatch our children out of our homes, left and right. Even when the family might be on hard times and stuff, but it's a supportive family. They're just snatching children out of our homes and placing them in, you know, in foster care and in orphanages or whatever they call those places now. And so, you know, there's money in some of that, but there's also, I think there's a way in which some of these people want to take our kids. My last point, 2 last points. I don't put everybody in the anti-abortion camp as really super negative. Some people, I believe, are honest folks, and they have like this religious belief and all that. But the other thing I think is that while I think we really have to fight very hard for a woman's right to privacy and a woman's right to choose, and at the same time, we have to recognize we have a problem in our community when 40% of the abortions are African women, that is Black women, 40% of the abortions, and talking about 13% of the population. So we have to deal with, and that is a problem of poor relationships between Black men and Black women. You know, African men and African women in our society have some problems. There are a lot of economic problems that impinge or make it difficult for us to have a solid relationship. So we have to fight those social, political, economic stuff that's screwing up our community. But at the same time, we have to figure out some way to deal with the fact that sisters who are pregnant cannot see their way to have a viable relationship once that pregnancy comes to term. You see what I'm saying? And that's a problem. And that's a problem we have to deal with, which is above, which is related to, but it's not the same as whether or not you support or oppose women's right to choose.
Now, Larry, do you feel like your office impacts that at all, what Dr. Holmes has talked about, or is that component, that's something that takes place or doesn't take place before they even see you?
As always, Dr. Holmes is making perfect sense. I'll take you back to where I was working in children and youth, and where I was the person taking kids out of homes. I was the one referring them to foster homes, you know, and you made a very good point, Dr. Holmes, about how our Black queens don't get in certain situations and don't know how to get out of it. We educate people on algebra, we educate people on geometry and English but we don't educate people on families, family life. And that's very important that we do that. I'm talking from, not picking a husband, but knowing how to run a household. You even brought up something earlier about the crack, the drug epidemic. That took a lot of our queens out the household.
Yeah.
And that set us back 100 years. Okay. And we need to get back to a place where we can take care of each other, not just the kids, of each other. We need grandmom in the home. We need somebody in the home to show mom how to do things, or now mom is out in the street, or getting off of drugs and trying to be a better person, trying to learn about life herself, because she never lived life before. It's very important that education piece is very important, that we have to put in our community, because to the life of me, I don't understand why we're, it takes a certain hue of color to pitch certain things in certain neighborhoods. But, we've been struggling for years with just the simple basic needs, the basic resources that we need in our community, and we can't even get that. There is parenting education in the community, but it's only visited when we're taking your kids out the home. It needs to be in high schools, middle schools, something, parenting education needs to start earlier than when, okay, the judge now filed a petition on your case and now we got to move your kid. Them lawyers are making money off those petitions. The courthouse is making money off those petitions. It's feeding the city, and the city is eating our kids, and we need to do better than that.
And, unfortunately, most of the time you don't get any education at all.
Right.
When I first got married, I learned how to be a parent just on the fly,
Right.
And I tried to look at some of the things my parents did that I liked, some things that I thought that I could have done better, and that was it.
Yeah, we need not only with women, but men need to learn how to be men. We need to grab these boys, teach them how to be men, let them know it's okay to provide for a woman and a child. It's okay to stay in the home. It's nothing. You're not a punk when you're holding your daughter. You're not. I laugh at. I always talk about Dre. I said, when Dre have kids, it's going to change the world. And he got 2 daughters, and he's one of the better fathers I've seen. That's my age. He takes that time to be with his children, and we need to let men know it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be involved. And in a lot of cases, when we're taking the kids out of these homes, the fathers are not around. We don't know the families of the father. The father got 10 aunts and uncles. We could have put the child with them.
Yeah.
It's certain things that we need to get more men involved, and we need to get more education on parenting, and it needs to start early.
And what's interesting? I've never actually myself met a brother that wasn't a good father. I've met women that I'm like, where's the dad? Oh, he off this and that, and they talk about him, but they're always this mythical person I've never seen. But and I had this conversation with a perfect stranger one time in Cincinnati. He was like, man, I've never met one brother that wasn't a good dad, that wasn't on top of it. I don't know if any of you have, like, anybody that personally.
I know
my father raised me, and him and my mom are still married. So that's all I know.
Right.
That's all I know. And, it was kind of a guilt thing growing up, because I didn't have a lot of friends that had fathers. And it was like, you can share my dad. You want to talk to my dad, he'll talk to you, because they didn't have that in their home. It was kind of a guilt thing. It wasn't bad people. They just, they just didn't have that extra limb that I had. And my father always, was very welcoming to my friends. He went to Ben Franklin High. He talked to Dre many times, and Dre had a father figure in the home as well too. So, it's like, that's what I know. but you know, growing up in my time, I didn't have a lot of my friends didn't have fathers in the home. And it got worse when I got older, going into the social services field, because a lot of the mothers didn't have the fathers in the home. And, you know, we had to be like, okay, so where's the fathers? Where's the family of the fathers? You know, we could just save a lot of time if we just put this child with a family member. Oh, I don't know him. Okay, well, we got to make a move. You know, this is what the judge ordered. I mean, this is the law. Right now, this is on the books of law. So we got to make a move. So, you know, like I said, we need to have more education. We need to have more vulnerability. We need to have more things in the community that's going to help us with just being family oriented, you know.
We need more money in our community to make all that happen, you know, because what's happening, you know, people are squeezing money out of our community. If you look at North Philly was a $1 billion a year drug operation. I mean, you know, it's a $1 billion industry. It was when I was down there, and it was a $1 billion industry. And so that's the industry, and that industry it makes it difficult. Now, where does that money go? That money goes out to community, most of it, and it gets up in the upper reaches of the society. When the banks were failing, that crack money got the banks back going again. You know, if you look at all this, all this, what do you call this stuff, gentrification stuff, that money that left our communities now going somewhere, fueling the banks and fueling this gentrification money, pushing us out again. So it's that money went somewhere, and so people are putting certain industries in our community and taking other industries out.
Don't forget the methadone clinics that because majority of your heroin users are white. There's a very small percentage of heroin users that are Black, and you open up these methadone clinics that aren't in Black communities. And what you're saying is the crack epidemic, as we call it, epidemic. Some people will argue that it wasn't, you know, but it decimated the Black community, and that's factual. But methadone clinics, most of the ones that I've ever seen are always in white communities where they're trying to give you help as opposed to giving you incarceration.
Now, Dre, you made a point earlier, and we kind of got off. I want you to make that point too. You said you do know some brothers that aren't good. Of course, this isn't the type of platform where we're trying to slam brothers, but I just wanted to hear your point that you were going to make there.
My own brother. We grew up in the same household. My mother's raising his child. He lived in the house with her. You know, the mother is in one place. The child and my brother are residing with my mom, and my mom is the one working overtime, providing for this child. Whereas though for me, and we have different fathers, my brother and I do, but I saw the distance that was created when my father wasn't around. And it was a personal pledge to myself that I said, I'm not going to repeat that. And I believe that we have the obligation to start stopping certain things within our community. You know, you always hear people say the buck stops here. We need to make that a reality and put some action behind it instead of making it a mantra. You know, we can all have a mantra, but when are you actually going to put the rubber to the road? Exactly. You know, so when I heard that my wife was pregnant and then we found out it was twins, it was like, all right, never did that before, but you know, you were man enough to go ahead and do the deed. You got to stand up and be like, all right, let's go.
Right.
Even with a couple programs that I'm involved with here in the area, you know, some of these young men are lost. You know, I'm going through applications right now for some scholarships. We got 5 applications. 3 of the men on the father says not available. Why? You know, and then when you talk to them, they have no idea about what it is to be a man.
Right.
Kids told me flat out, man, to be a man, you got to have a fly car, a fly house, and cash.
Right.
That worked if you was one of them, as Dr. Holmes pointed out. If you was slinging crack in North Philly at a certain time, that was what you looked like. You had a nice car, a nice house, and you had cash. You didn't have a bank account, you had cash.
You know, it's funny when you talk about being a man. One time, you both know, I'm, you know, I'm divorced from my children's mother. So one time it snowed and it was ice on the ground. And so it was the day that we do our switching. And so my ex-wife was coming to pick up my 2 children. So I told my son, I said, hey, your mother's coming over here. Going out there and shovel the walk and, you know, salt the walk so it's not treacherous when your mother's coming up. Mm-hmm. Now, she and I don't always see eye to eye, but I'm still going to teach him what's right, you know? So he was just joking, but it made me mad. He's like, oh, you want me to be a simp? I was like, what is a simp, you know? And I didn't know what it was. Y'all laughing. I guess y'all know what it was, you know, like some sucker or something. And, you know, man, I ripped him, you know, for that. And he's like, I was just playing. I was like, man, I'm serious. I'm telling you what you need to do for your mother, and you giving me this nonsense. But although he said he was playing, and I believe him, it's some cats, some young brothers that really do buy into this stuff, that as opposed to like it's just entertainment. Like, yeah, I liked Biggie and everybody, but it's just entertainment. You know, it's not like I'm gonna make this my life or my lifestyle, you know? So that's a whole nother conversation.
No, I mean, no, and that's why when I said earlier, we gotta make better choices on who we're with, you know? Mm-hmm. When you lay with that brother, you with him for life. Is that brother going to be around or is he not?
Right.
What you going to do? You got to make a better choice, you know? And I'm not trying to be rest in peace Kevin Samuels here by saying that, but I'm just saying, you know, we got to make better decisions, because 5 minutes can change our whole life. Mm-hmm. That's all it don't even take 5 minutes. So you got to be careful who you're with, who you're around, you know, who you want to lay with, who you want to go out with, because you never know. You just got to make better choices. And, you know, I'm not saying that's a big problem, but that's a problem. That's part of a problem that we're having. We're not making good choices. We're not making good decisions. Like you said about being a man, you know, and sometimes, you know, if you don't know if you don't see a man, how you gonna know how to be a man? Right. So, you know, let's keep it 100, you know, and people like me, Dre, you and Doc, we're not expendable. We can't save a billion dudes, but we can talk to who we can. You exactly. know, I've been in the mentoring situation. I know Dre been in the coaching situation. You've been in the counseling situation. Dr. Holmes laid some jewels on me when I was in undergrad. So, you know, we were blessed to have a positive male impact in our lives. On top of that, I had my father and I had my grandfather. You know, your grandma better not touch a grocery bag. Right. Go out there and make sure your mom get in this house. To this day, my mom does not touch a grocery bag if I'm with her. You know, just things about being a man. You know, that has to be learned in the community. You know, we have to learn that, you know, along with knowing how to be a woman, you know.
And that's a show in itself. Hey, let me end with this kind of curveball question.
And already, man.
Actually, you know, we don't have to end. Hey, all right, well, let me just throw out this curveball question. I just thought it might take us to the end, but we don't have to. We enjoy these conversations. Here's the question. All right. And I might be off by a year or two. And Doc, you probably know better than me because you were an adult at that time. All right. 1973, that's when Roe versus Wade came out, right? That's when the Roe versus Wade decision was made, 1973. And it was also the same year, and I just thought of this as we were, you know, talking, that the DSM-4, and for anyone listening, you know, watching that doesn't know what the DSM-4 is, that's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Psychological Disorders. As a school counselor, I don't use it much, but most therapists and things of that use it. Now, that was also the same year that homosexuality was removed from the DSM-4 as a psychological disorder, because before that, it was considered a psychological disorder. So Roe versus Wade and homosexuality removed as a psychological disorder. Coincidence or no? anybody can start.
Well, it's not a coincidence, and not just those two things. I mean, you look at 1973, 1972. You had the African Liberation Day March. You had the Black Liberation Movement going on during that period, the 70s. You had and out of the Black Liberation Movement, as a response to the Black Liberation Movement, you got the Women's Liberation Movement. You began to have Earth Day right around that time, in late 60s, 68, I think, 72 maybe. And so, and the Gay Liberation Movement, the people who sparked the Gay Liberation Movement, if you take it to what they call the Stonewall riots, those were brothers who were influenced by the Black Power movement. So you had all kinds of movements opening up for human liberation at that particular time. And now you have people who are trying to say, you're trying to put all those things back in the box. So you're saying that you want to get rid of what they call critical race theory, which is, a guy has a book out, Fear of Black Consciousness. Because this Black consciousness helped us kick the whole thing off. Then you want to make women subservient again, so all of this stuff is all part of the same thing. It was a not libertarian, because that's reactionary, but it's a liberationist period, and which this was occurring. You also at that period, I knew people in the 70s who were arrested for cohabitation. They were unmarried, and they happened to be political activists. These were whites by and large, and they were active in the anti-war movement. And the police would come in and arrest them, pick them up right out of their bed and arrest them. So you had that kind of thing. And we talked a little bit. I guess we were kind of talking before the show, but that's also when you had the Welfare Rights Organization, which was fighting also in this liberation front for the rights of mothers who are on welfare or receiving assistance that they needed to receive, the level of assistance that needed to be received. And they also needed to be able to have families in the household, because in order to get the assistance, they had to keep the man out of the household. And that's what broke up the family. That's one of the things that helped to break up the family. So, it's the 70s, the early 70s, late 60s was a period of liberation. And that's the connection, I think, and that included gay liberation, earth, what do you call this stuff? Climate, worrying about, people involved with the climate. Native Americans were doing all kinds of stuff. They were taking over Alcatraz, It was a very alive period. It's very different kind of period.
So it's not just tied into that.
I think it's all part of a movement for progress and liberation.
Now, Dre and Larry, I know that's hard to follow. Doc is always hard to follow, but do you all have anything to add to that as far as if you thought that was a coincidence or not?
I'm gonna take it to the yard. 1837, you had a creation for the Institute for Colored Youth in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Also, 1837, Philadelphia, in the state of Pennsylvania, you have laws that are put into place to prevent certain types of people from voting. So freed blacks and so forth. They were put into, I forget what the jurisdiction they were put in, but just looking at the different things within law that happened, it was like Cheney, Institute for Colored Youth gets created, this law comes out a month later. So you start to see that these types of things aren't coincidental, they're purposeful. Because why would you have to create something like that after you get a bunch of African Americans that are getting ready to get educated? What's the purpose? And then you start to see that, the purpose is we got to make sure that you don't get too educated, that you get above and you can assimilate into society and you can cause problems.
Right. It's like Obama gets elected, Tea Party pops up. It's like the same thing, a couple steps forward, something happens. Now, Larry, unless you had anything to add to that, I want to ask you another question. Doc made a good point. We talked about keeping the man out of the home.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid going to see a movie at the drive-in with my family, of course, because I was a kid. Claudine, you know, with James Earl Jones.
Speaking my language.
Yeah, you know, what's that beautiful sister's name? Diane Carroll.
Yeah.
All right, may she rest in peace. And I remember just because she was dating a man, you know, James Earl Jones, and he was leaving gifts over the house, you know, it's like, you know, when the social worker came over, they had to hide everything he dropped off, like the toaster and the, you know, so on and so forth. Does that still go on just from your experience in social services? Not you specifically, but does that still go on?
I'm going to give you a story on that. Although Doc and Dre is hard to follow. I had a family that he had 7 kids in the home, and he had 2 houses. He had one house that he was living in, the other houses across the street. And you know, it was another worker that was with us. She was of the other race, and the steps in the house across the street was like shaking. Not the steps in the house he was living in, steps across the street. And she complained to the child advocate that the home was unsafe because the steps were shaking. Now, mind you, this guy is building his house with his own 2 hands. So when I found it out, I gave him a call. I said, I know you do carpentry, but I'm just letting you know right now, this is what's going on. Because they kept trying to get this man out the picture. He just came home from jail. He was very angry because he got locked up, that his kids was taken into custody. So he was very angry at everybody. It just so happened when I came on the scene, his whole attitude changed. So we had a good rapport. So I gave him a call. I said, listen, I'm gonna come to your house at 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning. Those steps need to be fixed. And he fixed them. And the lady brought it up in court as to try to keep the kids out the home because they didn't like him. They didn't like the father. And I said, Jan, I was there this morning, the steps is fixed. So I say that to say that there's a lot of undertones that keeps this whole cycle going. If they don't get you one way, they're going to try to get you another way, you know, and this is something that continues in society, you know, even if I'm walking down the street, you know, they look at the sky on my face, you know, oh, it's a problem. Like, no, it's not. Like, I'm not doing anything. I see Dre shaking his head, but I'm not doing anything, you know, I'm just walking here. You know, it's always that undertone that tries to fault if a minority family is trying to stay together, they're trying to find some fault in that male figure in their home. And there's always that undertone.
And you know what they'll do? That man, okay, for one, he's been locked up. It's a very stressful situation to be trying to re-enter society, find gainful employment, and provide for 7 kids. So if he chooses to relax once a week by smoking a joint, then they want to give him a urine test and send him back to prison. But the same people testing him are getting drunk off brown liquor every night.
Now, the man gave me no problems.
Right.
You know, he gave me no problems. And we worked it out. It was good. It wasn't, but it's always that undertone there. And it's going to stay there as long as, you know, certain races are not educated on how to handle that. You know, it's a way of trying to control, you know. So when you brought up Claudine, yes, that still happens. I mean, you know, even when my cousin disciplined his son, they try to come in there and control that situation. You know, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. But hopefully one day it'll get better.
Well, and we could close on this, Larry. Let me ask you. I remember when, was it Michael Brown? Was he the one killed in the St. Louis area? Is that Michael Brown? So they showed during the protest, it was a black cop out there. And so this sister came up and was yelling at him. You know, she's like, what did you think of the, you know, decision, whatever? And he admitted, he said, I didn't agree with it. And Dre, you shake your head like you saw this too. And so she said, well, why you why you, how can you be a cop? He's like, you want all the good cops to leave? You know, and to me, that made sense. You know, although police haven't been the greatest institution for us, we need some brothers in there, you know? And so that's the question I'm posing to you. Although, you know, kind of what I'm getting from you, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that family services, some of those services that are offered can help our people, but can also hinder our people.
Oh yeah.
You know, do you feel it's an extra challenge to you as a Black man being there, that you just have to see certain things and make certain things right, like you did with the brother telling them about the steps?
It's not a challenge, it's a different angle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, social work was built on, or was formed by females, and it's a female industry. And, you know, a lot of people can't communicate with men, you know, and a lot of fathers can't communicate with the workers. So I just deal with it from a different angle. It's kind of like, it's not really a challenge. It kind of comes off a little smoothly when I come on the scene. So because of that, it kind of just calms everything down. And I never had any issues as far as that was concerned. But it's just, the challenging part of it is more so, I don't like to see people treated a certain way. I don't care if you Black, white, Caucasian, or indigenous. I like fairness. And if somebody's trying to railroad you, I'm going to try to make it right. It's as simple as that.
All right. And Larry, man, we appreciate you joining us. I definitely want to give you the last word. Doc, Dre, did either of you have another question for Larry before I ask my last one? Okay. I know we started off talking about this Roe versus Wade, and we went in a lot of different directions, but how do you realistically see this playing out? You think it's just going to be, they're going to make some noise, it's going to die out, or what do you think is going to happen?
I honestly think it's propaganda. There's always been propaganda ever since I was young. It's a continuous game of propaganda going on right now. Women are at a place where they're running offices, vice presidency, judicial. You know, a lot of our queens are doing their thing, and they have to continue to do their thing and basically get out there and keep that control, grab that control to stop it from happening. I think it's just a way of the Senate or certain people trying to scare or control us. And, you know, we're better than that.
Okay. Well, on that note, Larry, man, we definitely want to thank you for joining us. Dre, thank you for bringing this brother to us, man. Appreciate it. And we got to have you on again, man, to talk about a variety of topics. Don't just have to be social services. We could talk about many things.
I enjoyed myself. Dr. Holmes, it was great seeing you again. I love how you just keep things out the box, man. You know, you take something, you twist it around and look at the whole picture. I love it. But yeah, I enjoyed myself, Mr. Roberts, and I hope to see you again. Dre, I'll talk to you in a few minutes. But yeah, I appreciate you all, and thank you. It's been a pleasure. I have fun.
Thank you, brother. Take care.
Thank you. All right.
Lord, yes, papi, hit me one time and make it funky.
I was brought up and told to have no fear.